again. Brian Knudson, Brian Barath, back. Last time brought you a different driver release. Today is a new Callaway Golf. So, Brian, you got the joy of being out there at Callaway for the release. I unfortunately stuck back at home office. How was the whole party? Because it looked awesome. How do you call it a release?
Yeah, it was. I mean, they think their whole goal was to have a lot of like social media influencers as well as golfers there, and I think their approach, from what I've seen, it was one of my first events working with the team, and it was the way they ran it was fantastic. Huge shout out to those guys. Just as like full disclosure, they treat us really nicely. All the shuttle rides were on time. The range was amazing. Fresh golf balls to hit. And we got to talk to, which you'll probably see soon, Sergio and Michelle Wee. They were great. We got to talk to Sean Toulon about the new product line that's coming out as well. So across the board, we did learn a lot, and being able to hit golf balls from someone from the Great White North outside in California right now is pretty nice to actually test golf clubs. And I think like the whole line has a lot of really cool standout products on it.
It looked pretty sweet. I mean, I was following along on social media, and it seemed like every golf or non-golf, it was a pretty wide array. There were pro sports people, there were just people everywhere out there creating content, hitting balls, just like having fun. So I was really jealous.
Yeah, I think it's to listen to people who just like play golf and are 10 handicaps, talk about new golf clubs and how they are enjoying them or how it's different from what they're using. It's another way to look at it, because we all know that the average person going into a golf store to buy a golf club is not a plus handicap tour player, right? So instead of just having the old standard, oh yeah, I really like them, they're all new, I got fitted into them, which is great. Like it's just another way to do it, to be able to talk to another like a professional athlete not in golf that's just like, hey man, I love golf, I love playing golf, I'm not very good, but like I hit this really well, and it's different from what I'm using. Is like again, it was a different way to approach it, and I think they knocked it out of the park.
It was pretty cool. So I think the biggest thing that everybody's waiting for is of course driver. I mean, I think every year everybody knows driver, but this year, as usual, Callaway 2 drivers, Epic Flash and an Epic Flash Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
And did you hit both or just one? Or
hit both. I think I hit essentially everything in the line quite a few times. Actually got to do a fitting for one of the products just to see how it would compare once fit, which is pretty interesting. Like just the spin difference between the two drivers under the same circumstances. It was like roughly 300 or 400 RPM difference once kind of getting into the right golf club. And they look great. Like I know I've seen some stuff about people complaining about the color, but I mean you don't see it, and I think it looks bright. I mean people want to guys swinging on TV, they got to see it, and that's the goal, right? And I think it does. The shape of it's really nice as well. I've always sometimes not been a huge fan of the shape of Callaway drivers. I find that they're sometimes really rounded, and they look a lot smaller than they actually are. Whereas this has a nice profile, but it doesn't look small. It doesn't look really small where it looks like it's unforgiving or there's like a lot of bulge and roll in the club face. So
yeah, and I agree. The color to me doesn't matter. I mean, I understand the other part of it too is when it sits on a store at retail, you've got to have something to decide, so they pick it up, take a look at it, and want to hit. So
yeah,
color at the bottom, it doesn't really affect me much. We were talking just before we started. The crown does have like a little line along with the chevron on it. That people are going to take it or leave it. I haven't hit it outside yet, so for me, it's a touch tracking only yours. But I think you were saying it didn't really bother you at all. You hardly noticed.
Yeah, and I mean once you get out in the sun too, like it's one of those things where you don't really notice it behind the golf ball. And I'm interested because they've done it with the other products in the past. Is what they're going to offer through like the custom color option. So that'll be cool. So it might allow the consumer to. They didn't mention anything to us. That's like strictly a prediction, but to give the consumer that option to just kind of change things up with a different color is one of those things that's probably going to be on the table.
Yeah. No, I think I don't know if they've showed it yet, but I think it's definitely coming. I think it's
all right.
Get yourself all black or red or
yeah.
But the big story of these is flash face. So flash face, from what I've read, is basically taking a bunch of computer AI simulations, all that, finding the best face they could find. Is that fairly accurate, or what really is it?
That's what the technology boils down to from their point of view. Is they're saying that by allowing this computer to analyze a lot of different impact and like obviously multiple like a ton of impacts across the board, different players, as well as how the face is going to react with materials and all those different things. It definitely comes down to like especially what's always interesting is if you look at the back of any driver club face, usually it's symmetrical. Like the kind of under the hood, they're always symmetrical. And what it's come out with is this like really almost weird asymmetrical like wave weight distribution pattern. And what's that allowing them to do is increase ball speed through their testing. That's what it shows. We saw some pretty good numbers across the board on the product, and I mean I think that's like that is the story. And again, when we talk about ball speed, we're not just talking about center hits because there is the limit, right? We have to think about where the ball speed really expands across the board and how that affects the sweet area. I don't like to say sweet spot. Sweet spot by definition is like this little micro area, but the larger you can increase that the area where you're going to get maximum results or very close to maximum results, they're showing that they're able to do that with this technology.
Yeah, and I agree, because I mean, most of us, we don't hit it in the center of the face.
Never.
Yeah, the ball speed we need is, yes, outside of that area.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had the pictures, I think they're on GolfWRX.com, but they have the pictures of kind of the inside of the face, and it does. It just kind of looks like almost like an amoeba type thing. It's not just a round cone or an X pattern anymore. It is really kind of just pattern. And then they couple that with jailbreak again. So jailbreak's still there for what, the third driver now?
Yeah. It started with Epic, now in Rogue, and now we have Epic Flash. And I think all of it together, if you think about like the technology is not just about that. It's you have the jailbreak, you have the ability to adjust along the back of the driver and really dial it in. And like any of the other Callaway product, it has the adjustable hosel with the cog system. So you can dial loft up or down. Just from a custom fitting perspective, this gives you a lot of options, especially with the two heads. The Sub-Zero definitely, like, it is a smaller club head. It looked a bit smaller. From the pictures that we were able to take and we were able to post on GolfWRX.com, shameless plug, obviously, you're here watching it. If you want to take a look at what it, like from the side-by-side, how the profile fits the bottom, you can really see how they've shaped the driver along with using weight distribution to make it lower spinning and more workable. So don't like to use the term less forgiving, like to use the term more workable. And it is a more workable driver, but it still has all the adjustability in the back with the movable weight and just in a different shape and a different package.
And with these, I mean, the Epic and the Rogue, there was Sub-Zero, but Callaway didn't truly come out and just yell, hey, it's lower spinning. It was kind of like just known that, yeah, the weight forward in the Sub-Zero would be a little lower spinning. It sounds like from what you're saying this year, they're going to say, well, maybe not yell it again, but they're going to kind of have it marketed as there's Epic Flash, and then Epic Flash Sub-Zero will be a little lower spinning, instead of before just saying, well, we make two models and, you know, they fit different players.
Yeah, and
it?
They like through the fitting process and talking to the product guys that were there, they really wanted to talk about how the technology is the same in both of them. It's just they're going to fit different players. So the person who needs a little bit more spin or needs that, it's a neutral weighted driver, and what that weight shifting along the back allows you to do is, along with the hosel, is create some bias. And the Sub-Zero gives you all of that technology, but in a slightly lower spinning package. And they were more than upfront about it. Again, that's going to be part of what they're going to talk about across the board with the product line. I don't know, but it definitely is a lower spinning product with all the same technology.
And the interesting thing too with this Sub-Zero is the first one that doesn't have two interchangeable weights.
Yeah.
Epic had a weight that you could move from front to back or back to front. You can move the heavier weight forward or back, depending on how you wanted that driver to play. This one has just got a static weight, near kind of near the face a little bit, but there's no back weight that you can take out and move forward. It's just a single weight in there, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think what they've done is really focused on the shaping because and with that weight in the front, it wasn't too heavy. It was like around like 5 grams or less if I remember having the discussion, but that I believe 16 grams around the back, it's still very low. And again, if you look at the shaping in the profile of the two drivers, it's easy to see how they would use like shaping and internal weighting to make that a lower spinning of the two products, just by like how the back and how the sole kind of curvature comes out and everything like that. So I think on tour you're probably going to see maybe 50-50 split. Really, I mean those guys, their swing mechanics are so good already that they don't need necessarily the lower spinning option. They're already hitting up on it. They're maxed out. They're using the right golf shaft, all that stuff. So you're probably going to see a 50-50 split because they're just trying to hit as far as possible. But I think for a lot of players, that lower spinning option, I know for me, hockey player, I hit down on it. I found the Sub-Zero for me spun less just because I don't have perfect dynamics.
Yeah, and I think that's been kind of the case with Callaway drivers. If you look at their staffs and the guys on tour who are playing their stuff, it really has been a 50-50 split all the way, I think, going back to like XR. When they had XR Pro, Sub-Zero, all that, it was never just one driver was the majority. There was always guys playing the standard head or the Sub-Zero. It was a real good split. Yeah, I'm with you. I think this year will probably be the same.
Yeah.
So drivers look great. You said Sub-Zero was probably the one that fits you the best.
Yeah, just because again I don't have perfect dynamics, I need anything that's going to help me lower the spin. So it was the better fit for me, but both look really great.
So in only the two this year, there's no like draw version of.
No, no, it's all about the adjustable weight in the back and then hosel settings.
Gotcha. Yeah, because last year we did have the draw road, but
yeah.
So drivers look great, but they've also put flash face in the fairways as well. So we've got the same thing: flash fairways, standard, Sub-Zero, both with flash face as well.
Yeah, and again, same. We're talking the same technology. What I liked about both of these fairway woods, which is I believe the first time they've done it in both models, is offer adjustable hosels.
Yeah.
So me and you, club nerds, we like to swap and test those golf shafts. So when you have that fairway wood option, you can go back and forth, which is great. That's what I like was really excited about both products because we've seen like, and the claim I think typically was always that the faster ball speed was most often achieved with the non-sleeved club head. When you see like the XR, any of the XR models, which are like damn hot fairway woods, they were always non-sleeved club heads. And now with the technology that they're able to bring with the jailbreak and the flash face, all that into a metal wood, they can keep the ball speeds as high as possible and use the adjustable sleeve. So again, for custom fitting options, you're going to be able to really dial in the specs as well as the numbers you're looking for.
Yeah, and XR16 is probably one of my favorite fairways of all time. So that one there, yeah, no hosel. So between the two, do they look much different? I remember back when like Epic first came out, they had Epic Sub-Zero, and Sub-Zero to me looked substantially smaller than the standard model. Did these two have a big difference when you set them down, or
there was a few noticeable differences, as they say, like the better player preferred look of some of the models. So there was full face grooves in the Sub-Zero, the Pro version, and then it was definitely a smaller profile. And again, in a fairway wood, we're talking a few cc's can really kind of change the profile and the shaping, which I really like. I prefer a smaller fairway wood. I tried the standard one, and they're both rockets, but the standard was noticeably more forgiving. Again, apples to apples, they're two of the same golf clubs, so there is a noticeable amount of forgiveness in the newer one, and not in the newer one, the standard one, and it's what it really shows and showcases is from their perspective is as they add technology to these golf clubs, they're also increasing the ability to custom fit with that hosel. So that to me, as someone who sold and worked in a shop that fit, I don't know, hundreds of XR fairway woods, to see just because they were like one of the hottest things on the planet when it came to fairway woods. So because of that, and to be able to put that technology with adjustability for, I think, for custom fitters out there, when you go to a studio or you go to like a Callaway demo day or a fitting day, and for their perspective, they're going to be able to really dial in for any player.
Yeah, I mean, that was always a bummer. I mean, as junkies like we are, you go to a demo day and you just want to hit some clubs, and there'd never be an XR with like custom shaft or anything crazy or heavier, because you just can't. You'd have to have so many clubs to carry around. It's just not easy. So
Yeah,
I love seeing it. And again, I'm a big fan of Callaway's adapter, only because once you put a grip on, there's no rotation.
oh, never changes. I love it.
Usually a rib grip or a reminder grip, or like the Epic Flash series has, the Golf Pride Align series.
Yeah.
So, which I'm currently using anyway. So, yeah, it's kind of nice to have that feature. Yeah, between the fairways, I mean, you probably get fit for those, but do you have one that you kind of preferred over the other?
As I talked before, I'm a big like high spin guy, so I prefer the smaller one. And because again, I'm not a longer player either, and so I do hit it out of the rough when I needed to. So I prefer the smaller shape, just because it gets through a little quicker. And that would be, I just prefer the Sub Zero, but I could see for a lot of people that need a fairway wood on a shorter golf course, who's just your average golfer, how the standard version can be a big help off the tee, because you can dial it down. You can dial down loft. You can make it a little more upright. You can just basically turn it like a mini driver to launch it off the tee.
Yeah, and with those there, I would think I was kind of taken back, but kind of question that there is no Epic Flash hybrid.
No, they went right to the Apex. So, and I think you're seeing this with a lot of OEMs now. The hybrid releases are really lining up with the iron releases versus doing them with the wood releases, because people are trying to fit them into their bag. The Apex looks a little bit more rounded than the ones in the past. I was always a huge, and Chip Brewer, obviously people know he came at one point from Adams Golf. So I'm sure there was some design influence, because there was never really a lot of Callaway hybrids on tour, and now you're seeing a lot more kind of sneak in there because of their profiles and their shapes. I used to play and still have one kicking around somewhere in this shop of mine, a 9031, those old super hybrids from Adams, like the really small ones. It's very similar in that profile, just to like their previous Apex Pro, but what they've done is they've just rounded it out. So it's definitely more forgiving, but it still has a real good, better player's profile, higher toe, looks open, full groove, I believe, if I remember correctly. So it really is designed to fit the person who's looking for the iron replacement versus, say, looking for the 9 or the 7 wood.
Yeah, and the higher handicap players probably going to go gravitate towards more something like the new Big Bertha that just got released, which is a bigger footprint, has probably much more forgiving, and launches higher. But it is interesting because, I guess, for me, Apex, when it came out, was always that low handicapper. You know, it wasn't necessarily how far can I hit it, how high. And this one now has jailbreak in it, which the previous one didn't. And it is a little larger shape. I would say it's probably similar in size to a long time ago, because I still play it, the Big Bertha 815 they came out with. Them.
Very
close size.
Very similar. Yeah, I remember like hitting that a lot, like testing that club before, because it was a hybrid with adjustable hosel, which was pretty cool. And it's very very similar in shape, with just some more technology. And you can see how that would fit into the bag of a better player or just like your average golfer, because it just fits like there was a lot of golfers. That was the really cool thing too. Is I got to see a lot of golfers of a lot of different handicaps hit golf clubs right off the bat. It wasn't like I was just watching Tour Pro stripe it. And I think that's again part of what they created in their launch event, was you got to see 15 and 20 handicaps try golf clubs out, and how it improved or how they liked it and how they enjoyed it. And I think you saw a lot of people try that hybrid out, because not a lot of people can hit long irons, and it really showcased that any player, once you get the right shaft in it, obviously for clubhead speed and maybe looking for weight and just the right flex and weight, it's a great option for a lot of people.
And did they mention that this one's bendable like the previous Apex was? Because I remember the other Apex, you could order it like 1 or 2 degrees upright or 1 or 2 degrees
them. Getting into the custom fitting aspect of it, that was one of the things we just didn't talk about at the moment.
I, I'm gonna think it might be. I mean, why else would you stick with the bonded hosel in an Apex name like that? So
Yeah.
But no, it definitely is a little different than previous. I was a little not shocked, but I was kind of surprised when I saw it in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing that was probably other than drivers, which I mean, all of GolfWRX were all obsessed with drivers. But I think the biggest release that Callaway that people were waiting for was Apex and Apex Pro replacement, and I think Callaway did a great job. They look really good.
They've really taken a step forward as far as the looks of the golf club, and they've gone. I know people kind of talk about how like release cycles are pretty quick and all this stuff, but with their irons, I think they've really taken their time in refining what they had, because the Apex was like just an absolute stellar golf club at retail, on tour, just across the board. It was a real winner in both models, in the Pro and in just the standard model. And I mean, we saw Xander just won with the pros, the Apex Pros. He's had them in the bag for quite some time without badging on them. Now that we know what they are, and like they're the pros, especially like to my eye as a Forge Golf Club guy. Forge doesn't have to be tiny. And trying not to pigeonhole that brand or that style of making golf clubs, but it's the best shaped Callaway iron that I've like ever looked at, and I'm not just throwing it out there. The pitching wedge, just the way the grooves line up on the club face, the hosel transition, that package, which is smaller, and I believe too they're going to combo both. Like they're going to combo the irons. They're going to offer that almost as like a stock option, because again, longer irons are hard to hit, and not everyone swings their 6-iron at 100 miles an hour, and that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, no, I have seen that where they're going to combo that up, which they started doing last year or not last, 2 years ago now, with Apex CF16s. But yeah, I think that goes over really well. I mean, I was a guy who played a combo set almost all of last year, so something like that definitely appeals to me. But that's the one thing that you touched on, which I think Callaway previously had dropped the ball, which was pitching wedge shape and size. It felt like with the Apex, the pitching wedge was always looking too big or had a weird kind of transition. To hear that it's fluid with the set is awesome.
Best pitching wedge they've ever done, and it was like they're not the only ones that ever struggle with this golf club. You used to see it with like the Mizuno MP line was one that people always like. The pitching wedge is a little bit more rounded and all that stuff, and then once the JPX, the ones before came out, you saw that transition into the pitching wedge was like really sharp. The 18s really sharp, and I think with a lot of golfers using the wedges now, like so they would, instead of using the Pro wedge with the set, they're buying those pitching wedges. They're really using that shape versus trying to transition the iron shape into the pitching wedge. So you're seeing a good. I don't know if you ever pay attention to this. I always say like the sign of a well-designed set of irons is the transition between the 7 and the 8 iron. It's always how you can tell like how a great designer would design a set of golf clubs, because you go from the kind of not the distance, but you go into the scoring clubs, from the mid iron to the scoring clubs, where the shapes start to really change. A great design set of golf clubs, instead of just like here's the 7-iron and let the computer do the rest of the work kind of thing. What that really shows is that they really work in shaping those golf clubs to fit the eye of any player, and that's with both the Apex and the Apex Pro.
Yeah, and the Apex definitely. It's funny because you mentioned it's still got cut face, and then it's got the microsphere injection. But when you look at the back, it doesn't. It almost looks like a Pro. If it didn't have badging on it, in a sense, it didn't say, standard Apex and looks like Apex Pro. You'd almost confuse the two, because you don't see that big cut face anymore on the Apex that you did in the last two. It's really well hidden.
Yeah, and I mean, you could talk to a lot of players, and I mean, not everyone wants that, like that something on the shelf, even with the shelf appeal, or you open up a drawer at a custom fitter. It's like you could always kind of joke that it's like, oh yeah, the ones that are red and green and yellow and blue and they're shouting at me are like the game improvement clubs, whereas like the better players clubs have more of a traditional look to the back of them, even if there is technology in there. And I think what they're doing is finding that club where people want to aspire to, but you can still be that 15 handicap and it like looks great in your golf bag. It doesn't feel like you're like someone's going to say, oh, well, obviously like you're a high handicap because you have, like, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's more, again, it's more of the aesthetics, but what it just shows, again, like refinement of the line to fit a lot of people.
And it does. It's a great looking set. The Apex, I'm assuming, had, like you said, crazy ball speed. It's probably going to be a little lower spinning. The Apex typically has. But no, it's one of those that, you know, kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's just, you want to slight refine and keep it going because it has been such a good iron.
Yeah.
5 years, going on 5 years now.
And they had a lot of different shaft options as well with the line. Actually, the Apex Hybrid, going back to that, had the new True Temper.
Oh, yeah, it had to do with Catalyst.
Yes, the Catalyst. They had Catalyst in the Hybrid, which transitioned to an option in the irons. So I think, again, they're really trying to focus on players looking for, instead of just throwing like more of a wood shaft into it, they're looking for those players. They know who their kind of target audience is, obviously. So they're really kind of finding a way to make sure that if you are getting your combo set, have it be Apex with hybrids or have it be Apex Pro with Apex, and then maybe throw a hybrid in. It's going to blend without the set. You're not trying to like fandangle some weird shaft into the hybrid to fit a distance, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, who would do that, Brian?
What's wrong with that?
You know anybody?
Now with Apex Pro, I mean, they're going to sell that combo set, but I know a lot of times, like, you know, people on our site, they'll sit there and say, well, I want to start my Pro at, you know, say 6 iron and then just have 4 or 5. Are the finishes close? I know in previous years the finishes have been different, so you comboing them on your own. Not that it was bad, it was a cosmetic thing, but they did look significantly different. Are the finishes close enough where you could combo them without really noticing?
Yeah, you're not gonna, like, unless, like, obviously, like, side by side, there's a bit of a difference, but like pulling one club out of your bag and then, like, if you pull a 4 iron out off a short par 4 and then you go to pull your 8 iron out and they're different clubs, it's not like, ooh, what happened, right? Like, it's not like you're getting shocked by it. And that's, again, where I think that's part of where the badging into the Apex with the Pro, it just fits the bag transition when it fits the club transition when they're there. So you don't really feel like there's this massive like distance or difference in as far as the gapping goes.
Yeah. And did they mention, because I know that it was brought up before in the forums, did they mention anything about Apex Pro versus X4? Because, I mean, from the casual observer, there does seem to be a little overlap there. Did they mention anything different in terms of how those two would perform against each other, or what the big difference would be?
I think what you're just seeing is just like a different kind of, the X was always kind of aimed right towards that absolute, like, the best of the best player, and then you have the Pro, which could try to fit a lot of people. There's a lot of blurring of the lines, to be honest. I mean, you're going to see a lot of like pros. I think the X Tour was always like a little bit of an offshoot, right? A lot of companies make like a blade. They don't really do a blade anymore, other than for like tour players. So it just gives that different option, but it's a different shape as well. I always find the tours were a little more square, like that bladey kind of look, whereas the Apex has soft lines. Like the Pro has really soft lines. There's nothing really sharp, but it still has that like real nice, better player shape, really compact. So basically, I think kind of very similar to the player, but that again comes down to maybe someone wants something that looks a little sharper, a little bit more round, and then they just have the option to fit your eye.
Yeah. Now, those are big, and there's also now a new wedge that we've seen. So the new PM grind wedge, which cosmetically, from just looking at it, really, other than a little medallion kind of towards the heel, it doesn't look that much different. The overall shape looks pretty similar. The one I saw, which was a 54 degree, looked like it had a slightly straighter leading edge and a milled face. So is that the big thing with those? Is new milled face, some slightly different grooves?
Yeah, we got lucky. We got to talk to Roger Cleveland about it and kind of the design and the input, which was really neat. There were things that I didn't pay attention to that when he explained it really stood out. One was, as you said, the leading edge. You think the lower lower lofts actually have a straighter leading edge, but as you get into the higher lofts, the leading edge actually gets more rounded. And the idea behind that is the fact that as you open it up, you keep a look that's a little bit more appealing than feeling like the leading edge being square would be pointed like way open out of your target. Like it just sets up a little differently. Obviously, the toe is a little bit more square as well, that we really like found that it looked. And then again, kind of one of the opposite ways that you would typically look at it, and that is as we got into the higher lofted wedges, there was actually more offset because, yeah, and I think it's why, and we asked them about it, like the i2, why that design is so popular and why, like how their refinements to that design kind of create a different product with this, like the grooves out on all the way out on the toe and the way they mill the club face. Obviously, there's a lot more technology in this golf club than a 30-year-old i2 wedge. But what and how they explain it is as you have more offset and you open up the club face, what that does is it actually keeps the club lower to the ground, and it keeps the hosel above, so that area in the heel where the grind is or where you remove material remains small. So as you open it up, you're still using the middle of the sole, and it doesn't feel like the heel's digging in. And as I always have advocated and I've talked about, is flatter lie angles in wedges can help with those open face shots. And this is one of those wedges where I was hitting shots out of a bunker with it, and I'm a fairly decent bunker player, but this thing's like point and shoot. It's got a big face on it. It's got a lot of bounce. It's easy to open up. And it was just, poof, poof. You can see how a guy like Phil can hit it over himself if he tries real hard, right?
And you actually did get a shot to hit it over Phil, didn't you? Or did you
I actually, we were during that, we were in an as at that time when they brought out the old Phil cutouts. So, but we did see that Phil took a few body shots on as they were cleaning him up. So it's probably a good thing he wasn't standing in front of, your average 10 and 15 handicaps trying to hit over him. Sure, there's some liability there.
Yeah, and no, but that wedge does look really good. I played one last year in a 60, and yeah, the new one, kind of like the middle face on it. It just kind of gives that feeling of you're going to put more spin on the ball. But
what was really fun was Anthony Taranto was at the event, and obviously, like, I'm a big fan of his, big wedge stamp, all of his stuff that he does, right? We see it up on the forums all the time. Greg posts a ton of great pictures of all the work that he does, and I kind of joked to him, like, you just have like a bigger canvas now on these on the backs of these wedges, and he was really excited for what they do. And he was a great guy to talk to as well about like how much he loves his job and what he does with wedges and how tour players get to make these really cool requests and he gets to fulfill them. And that was just kind of one of those things I noticed about those wedges is, man, you got a lot of place to put some art on these things. So we'll see some pretty cool stuff on tour pretty soon, I'm going to guess.
Exactly, yeah. So that might be my selling point to get a new 60 degree. I mean, I only had it a year, but I probably need a new one now just so I have more real estate.
Exactly.
So yeah, then to kind of, I won't even say round it out, but they've got a bunch of new putters coming out. So Odyssey, Toulon. The biggest story though is the I'm live here and I just blank on the name.
Stroke Lab.
I'm like picturing the yellow and black in my head. But yeah, Stroke Lab's the biggest one. Seen a bunch on tour already. But basically, lighter shaft, heavier grip, heavier head, and offers more consistency putting. Did I get that right, or am I way off?
Basically nailed it. Yeah, they've had wins on tour already, 3 or 4. They had a massive amount of immediate transition from a lot of players when they first introduced on the Euro Tour. They had like 20 go into play the first week. And I mean, guys don't typically change putters that often, even regardless of a new model coming out. So I think that shows kind of what it offers, especially they use, and this was designed with Phil Kenyon, putting guy, and they used things like Quintic putting, which is a high-speed, basically like super TrackMan for putting. They used the Sam Putt Lab. They're using high-speed cameras to track stroke, and that was extremely interesting to see, like all the technology. Because I've used Quintic before. I'm not really super familiar with the Sam Putting Lab, but I have used Quintic to fit golfers, and I mean, they get so much information. What they've found is because of heavier club heads, they can pull weight out of the middle of the golf shaft or golf club using the graphite shaft, create a very stiff profile with that graphite because of the material, the materials that you can use, the material properties. There we go. As I stumbled on my words there, the material properties of graphite allow them to make very stiff but very light. And as you get to the end, what I didn't realize, and I thought the same thing, was the grip was just going to be heavier. But you can use any grip on this putter, and there is a 40-gram small counterbalance brass weight that goes into the golf shaft. So if you don't want to use, like, I'm not a big fan of like big like grips, like oversized grips. So for me, I really thought that it was cool that you get all the same technology and you can use any grip you want. And the line looked great.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's caught on, it's caught fire, kind of on tour. And it is nice having that weight, because I'm the same way. I like to use my same grip I always use, and something like that, if I can't, I won't say that it's out of the discussion, but it's gonna be one thing that it's got, one hurdle it's got to jump over. And that's kind of what they did with the tank series. The tank was like that too, where they thought it was in the grip, and there was just a brass slug in the back of that shaft. But yeah, and then that one there's got, insert-wise, it's got that, is it
the micro hinge?
The white hot micro hinge?
Yeah.
You're right, yeah.
And it felt, I mean, it's a softer insert, and because of like the tuning that goes into like the way the shaft, it's graphite, all these different things affect feel. So their goal is to make something that kind of fits, and that's the cool thing with Odyssey, is they've always kind of focused on having different inserts for different like players' preferences, and just with their golf balls, and like depending on what line using, people are going to prefer softer. Softer should feel like it's not going to go as far. They've got to slow it down. Firmer faces want to go a little further. We talked to Sean Toulon about that kind of stuff, and it was really interesting to hear how much detail they put into designing a lineup for each player, as well as making sure that like the shaft, like how this flex really fits each putter model.
Yeah, and speaking of Toulon's got a bunch of new putters out as well. The big thing there is they took their diamond mill pattern and moved it across the entire face. I just like the look of it. I mean, performance-wise, it probably does help, but I just like the look. I think it's more uniform, and it's a better look to me.
The biggest thing he said about just the refinements they made, including exactly what you mentioned, which is the moving that diamond pattern from looking like an insert on a milled face to just stretching it across, is just player preference, right? You when you set it down, it kind of created a little bit of a this thing on the face that was really noticeable. Whereas again, if you stretch it across the whole thing, it kind of like doesn't jump out anymore, right? And as they talked about, it's all from player feedback. This line, the Toulon line, obviously it's a premium price point, and it's a premium product. They're offering the Stroke Lab shaft in it. They believe in this product so much, and what this does to like just people's putting strokes in general, by how it can affect consistency and how it improves consistency, that they're taking it from the Odyssey line and putting it into the Toulon line, along with the visual refinements. And then again, from the refinement standpoint, they have the new EXO.
Yep.
And
2-ball for sure.
Yeah.
Saw here in the office, and honestly, I've never been a 2-ball guy. It's never been that look for me, but I actually didn't mind it. I kind of like the look with that, with the ring around it and all that. It's pretty sharp.
Yeah, and they're offering too a lot more mallets with toe hang. Right? They're realizing, again, focusing and using data-driven like performance numbers, that certain players are going to need something that's going to fit their stroke a little differently. So you're seeing a lot more of those slight toe hang, heel shafted with the little flow neck in the mallets in the line with the shaft. And then with the 2-ball XO, there was the mini Fang, call it the Fang, or I think 7 is the number. How the original one, they actually across the back, they've got the piece connects at the back. And I kind of made the joke. Then I said, "Oh, is that because of the tuning fork effect?" And he said, like literally under the high-speed cameras, you see upon impact there was like resonance in the back of the putter. So by closing that off, it just creates a much different feel, while maintaining like all the high MOI properties of the putter.
Yeah, no, that's all. I mean, me being a number 7 guy and using all
Yeah.
I can't wait for that one. And there's also rumors that we had Greg had photos of a Toulon Las Vegas that's very similar looking. So we'll see. We'll see if we wait and see if those make it out. But I will definitely try.
It was and the Fang was actually smaller. They kind of called it the mini, which I think, again, depending on the player, that it's going to fit people's eyes, because there's always been this like kind of ebb and flow of like really high big mallets, then smaller and bigger. And I think the flows are starting to slow down, and it's kind of like we have that answer style design. We have that traditional flow neck or plumber's neck, heel toe weighted putter. And now we have the mallets that are going to fit people's eye, but they're really just, again, it just comes down to refining the shape for the player, because you want to be able to walk in, you want to be confident in your putter. So you want it to look good, right?
For sure. So after all that, I know there's probably even more that was out there that you had to say, out of all that, like I asked before, what's the number one on your list that you can't wait to hit? Even though you hit them all, what's the number one that you can't wait to get on the course to actually to really try?
A tough one, because it was all really good. It was all standout stuff. I love the driver, but to be honest, I thought the Apex Pro is going to be like a big hit. I love it. Like, the driver was great. I mean, I could pick driver all day long every time someone released something new, because it's like I just play 12 drivers, right? 12 drivers, a wedge, and a putter, and be like that guy from that old TV commercial, right? You can carry 14 clubs, but it comes down to, like, for me, like, how good that looks. I think a lot of people are going to look at that iron and go, wow, that does not look like a Callaway iron. And I think that's going to be, if I'm not just looking at it from my own perspective, but how other people are going to perceive it once they look at it, that's going to be a big one. Obviously, there's a lot of technology in this driver. Sounds great, feels great, all these different things. But I think what's going to shock people is when they put down the new Apex iron and just go, that shape can fit a lot of people.
Yeah, no, it will. Like I said, I've unfortunately been able to see those in hand, not hit them yet, but they do. They look great. I think people are really going to be excited, and I think they're going to do really well again at retail. For me, I'm going to go driver. I'm excited to see what the flash face is all about. So I'm excited to get that out on the course and see how it performs.
Yeah, we just need some snow to melt. That's me.
Yeah, and a little warmer temperature. So
I'll be shoveling this evening. I'm not. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that sums it up for kind of Callaway. Like I said, there's a ton there. So you and I will probably do this again shortly, because there's a lot of equipment coming out. So
there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Exactly. I guess we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Brian.